Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode. I'm really excited about today's guest of the day. Her name is Jennifer McCormack. She's a business mindset hypnotherapist and kinesiologist. And I'm fascinated with her story, her skill set. And I love it when entrepreneurs can combine mindset and talking about physiology, getting into your body, state, flow. And I hope she can provide something inspiring and that the audience can take away with. So, Jennifer, welcome.
Thank you, Christopher. Thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah, I know we connected through Podmatch, and you've got quite an interesting skill set that I would love for you to share with the audience. So, talk about your story and your background, and we'll dive right into the conversation.
Yeah, I do have an interesting skill set, and it's not a skill set that you normally come across, the combination of modalities, but I've done it very strategically. So back years ago, I actually spent 20 years in the rag trade, in the fashion industry, and got to a point in my career where on paper, everything looked amazing, right? We climbed the corporate ladder. We had the six-figure jobs. Everything was perfect. You traveled. You went overseas 3-4 times a year. You're at the top of your game. But I was burnt out, and I started to have children where I thought that I could just be one of those mums that went to work, husband stayed home, look after the kids. But when you have that little bubba in your hand, it's such a different story. And I didn't want to go back. And I've always been to see a kinesiologist throughout my life, and something just flipped one day. I went, I want to study this. I don't know where it's going to go, but I want to learn this modality. And from that, I started working with babies that couldn't sleep. So we dealt a lot with birth trauma. And then I did a good 5 years in gut health. So the clients would come to me when they had been to all the specialists, all the natural therapies, they'd done all the elimination diets, and they weren't getting results. They were still having bloating. They were still having all the symptoms, all the IBS symptoms. So what I worked on with them was the anxiety, was the stress that was making them feel sick. And it was one day I was working with a fellow kinesiologist, and we were working on some gut health stuff. And we noticed the more we improved her gut health through releasing the stress and tension throughout her body, the more her business was growing. And so we got intrigued and we're like, is this just a coincidence? Or can we flip the switch here somehow to ask the body to focus on a business growth instead of physical healing? Because with kinesiology, we have two bits of information that we input into the body. One, which is where we're at now, what's happening. What's happening is the bloating. What's happening is, the inconsistency with our diet and how we're reacting to food. And then we have a goal. Well, we want no bloating. We want to be able to eat what we want to eat to a certain extent. We want to know how our body's reacting to things. So we're like, okay, well, what happens if we input into the body and tell the body, because our body is an internal guidance of subconscious information that knows how to heal better than we do consciously. So what if we tell the body we want 12 clients instead of 10 and see what happens? And we were intrigued that this started to work. And so we took her from 10 clients to 12 clients to 15 clients a week. And we're like, there is something in this. So I started to do more case studies, and I wanted to see why this worked, how this worked, what was the broad spectrum of all of this. So my first case study was a business strategist. So I'm like, I really like this because she has the strategy on how to make businesses work. That's one thing I don't have, but what I do have is the energetics behind it. So she came to me, this business strategist, and she was going through a real lull period in her business where she was not only not making money, she was borrowing money to survive. So I'm like, okay, this could be an interesting case study. And I said to her, what is your goal for this month? Let's work but every week for a month, see what happens. She goes, my goal, I need $10,000. I'm like, okay, let's do it. So inputting that into the body, we want $10,000 in the next 4 weeks. We worked on things like how she looked at business, because she came from a family of employees. So business appeared to her and her family and her heritage as very risky. So she had this underlying belief that doing business was a risk. We worked on emotions that she was holding. We worked on the stresses. We worked on creating a routine for her where it helped her get into her flow. So that looked like things like focusing on your goals. What structure do you need in your business? What do you need to do in the morning, whether that was, we worked for her, was the best thing was intermittent fasting. And so we worked out for her and her body what she needed to create a routine of flow. And so we did that every single week for 4 weeks. And at the end of the 4 weeks, I said to her, what is your tally? What's the income that you've brought in this month? Don't tell me it's nothing. Shows it was $9,997. This is brilliant. So I've been doing that ever since. And while on one aspect for me, it's fun and games to play with numbers and, how much money can we bring in and how many clients we can bring in. But then I started to see, Christopher, the impact it was having in some of these women's lives. And it wasn't just about bringing in numbers. It was helping them escape abusive relationships where they were financially tied up in and they had no financial control. It helps single mums be able to not have to do 3 jobs to look after their family, but actually give them not even financial stability, but financial being able to thrive in that section. And that's why I do what I do. But why I brought in all these modalities, because while kinesiology works brilliant on the energetic level and the energetics filtrate into the cellular level, into the mind and into the consciousness and subconscious, there are some people that are stuck in their head. And women are really good at this. We are very good at making up stories that are not real. We're really good at holding on to past that we just need to let go of. So that's where things like NRT works brilliantly for that. Hypnosis is amazing. Just work on that cognitive level down to the energetics. So it's like approaching the mind, body, and soul from both directions, so we can get not only lasting results, but almost immediate results.
Yeah. Really interesting, because I love how you're describing your ideal career. I mean, I have a similar story. It was like, I had the 6-figure, I had all the accolades, except I was living my parents' life, not my life. So what is interesting is you're talking about this, basically, it sounds like you're talking about this law of attraction, which I wanted to delve more into because you have this energetic shift for business growth. And it reminds me of this one time I read The Secret by Rhonda Byrne. And at the end of the book, she's got this blank check. You can write a blank check to yourself from the universe. And I think, in my early 20s, I put like 100K, I never made that in, ever amount. And then I put that in like that. I think it was like a year later, like my income was like 102K or something like that. It was fascinating. But yeah, talk about in your work, you emphasize creating energetic shifts to help business owners scale to significant monthly earners. And could you describe what these shifts typically involve? I'm very fascinated.
Yeah. Let's go back to a scientific level, right? So what we know with every cell in the body, right, is that it's made up of 0.0001% matter and 99.99% energy. And we know that energy acts as a magnet and it can be influenced by energy around it. So this is on a practical level. This is like when you walk into a room and everyone is stressed, like you feel that immediately, right? Or when you go into a room and everyone's having the best time, you're like, it's like infectious. Right? Yeah. And it's the same sort of thing. So when our cells and when our body is held with trauma of the past, with self-doubt, with beliefs that say that you can't have what you want, it attracts to your world exactly that. So part of this energetic work is what energy, what beliefs are you holding that do not serve where you want to go? And what you said about your career and living your parents' career, so to speak, or your parents' wishes, is so true, because we talk about the go with the flow, right?
Yeah.
I see go with the flow as in we're going with the flow of our inherited beliefs and values. And when we look at how we obtain those beliefs and values, they're instilled in us when we grow up. When we look at our primary caregiving years from 0 to 7, that's when most of our beliefs and our values and our programs are inbuilt, and that's from our parents. So if we want to live our parents' life, go with the flow, right?
Yeah.
But if we want something different, we're going to have to construct a different energy, a different way of thinking, a different internal program. And it's not until we start to go on that path and question, well, why does this feel so hard when I actually really want it? And then you look underneath and you're like, well, because there is a belief that wealthy people are not good. The wealthy people only have one thing in mind. Wealthy people are X. The wealthy people are this, and they're not good people, right?
Yeah.
So why would I attract wealth to me if I think that I'm going to be a horrible person because that's what I grew up to believe, right? So it's being able to have that level of self-awareness to go, things aren't working out here. What is the underlying belief? And here's an example. I was talking to a girl years ago, and she was a beautician. And she was like, it's really hard for me to not only make money, but to hold money. And I'm like, isn't that interesting? Tell me about what you saw around money when you were growing up. Well, she's like, it's interesting because I come from a wealthy family. It's not the first time I've heard this. I've come from a wealthy family. Dad earned all the money. He was the primary caregiver, primary breadwinner. And he used to give mum money to pay the bills, to look after the family, blah, blah. But what I saw was that mum couldn't be trusted with money and dad drip fed her. So I made that believe, or she made that believe, that women were no good with money. So for her, if I don't feel good with money, if I don't feel like I can look after it, if I don't feel like I can be responsible with it, how can I trust myself with it? So therefore, I won't earn too much. I'll earn just enough, maybe a tiny bit more, but I will never earn enough where it makes me feel uncomfortable taking responsibility for it. So it doesn't matter if you come from a family from poverty or a wealthy family. What matters is what you saw and what you made that mean to you.
Yeah, it's really just kind of the law of attraction and manifesting, and just the way you describe things on a reconstructing things on an energetic level is really interesting. And so you've spoken about this impact of our parents earning on our own money mindset. Why do you think this connection exists, and how does it affect, us as business owners, entrepreneurs?
Why does connection exist? Because in our younger years, we're sponges. We don't learn by doing, we learn by seeing. We take examples from our external world on how we should be, how we should behave, what we should think, what we should feel, how we should feel. Mm-hmm. So when we are 24/7 with mum and dad, like our parents, especially in those very early years, they're our pinnacle, they're our safety. Whether that is emotional safety, physical safety, financial safety, we have a sense of safety with them. And we could go into that and look at relationships, right, and why some people keep attracting abusive partners. But there's a sense of safety in that if there was a level of toxicity in your household as you were growing up. It's normal. It's your comfort zone. And you'll naturally always draw back into your comfort zone. Now, your comfort zone might be highly toxic. It might be gambling, it might be addiction, but if it's normal for you and it's all you know, there's a cellular sense of safety there.
Yeah.
The unknown, the unfamiliar, that brings on that fight or flight system. It's like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing here. And sometimes that is money. Sometimes that is business. Sometimes that is exposure. Sometimes that is the world seeing you. I was having a conversation with one of my entrepreneurs last night, and we were talking about marketing. And it's almost like one line that I used with her is, the loudest person wins. Who can be seen the most, who can talk the loudest, who can have the biggest, broadest message. And she just goes, that just scared me. Let's unpack that. Why did it scare you? Because it shows in her a level of vulnerability. What if I get caught out? What if that I'm not good enough? And all these underlying beliefs that we have around being seen and being heard. Especially when we look at women, it's a relatively new thing for women to be in business. It's a relatively new thing for them to have their own platform. So some women still have ingrained in them this belief that I need to be quiet. I need to sit in the corner and observe. And so when it's time for them to do business and to be seen, be heard, because that's how we obtain customers, that there is a nervous system dysregulation that happens that we've got to make our new comfort zone.
Yeah.
So business is a very big personal development journey unless you come from an entrepreneurial background. Right? And then it's not necessarily about just going with that flow. It's how I perceived that journey in my parents and what I made that mean to me. Did Dad bring me on board in his company and made me feel like it was okay for me to work in there as well and experience that flow? Or was he always, this is my thing and you're there and let me do my thing, right? And then did you make that mean that Dad was the entrepreneurial one, he was the business mind, not me? So it always goes to, how did you perceive everything, and is that in alignment with where you want to go?
Yeah.
I always say that where you are now is based on the beliefs, the values, the programming, the thoughts that you have in this moment, or you've had before to get to this moment. If you have a goal that's over here, it's over here because you currently do not have the beliefs, the values, the understanding, maybe even the knowledge that is needed to be here. Once you do, you are here. So there's always where's the gap and how do I close it?
Yeah. Yeah. And kind of a follow-up question is, so, what are some of the ways in which emotional trauma can be healed, and what advice would you give to entrepreneurs wanting to heal these types of emotional trauma?
How do we heal emotional trauma? To be honest with you, Christopher, there's so many ways. And I love my modalities because they work for me. The ultimate thing here is you want a modality, no matter what it is, to be able to tap into your subconscious, because that's where the good changes are made, permanent changes are made. I can tell you, you know what? You are the person that gets the $1 million business. On a conscious level, you can fight that. You can make all the excuses. Oh, yeah, but I don't have the marketing skill set. Oh, yeah, but, I've never seen anyone do that. But on a subconscious level, it's totally different, right? On a subconscious level, especially when you go into, say, a hypnotic state, the barrier is lifted. So whether that barrier is lifted through hypnosis, whether that barrier is lifted through kinesiology, whether that barrier is lifted through breath work or journaling or anything like that, that is a very personal thing, right? I had one guy in here, he wanted to quit smoking. And I looked at him and went, hypnosis will not work for you because you don't want to quit smoking. Your wife wants you to quit smoking. And there is a big difference when it comes to intention. That is a really good example of you've got to want to change.
Yeah.
There are so many people that are stuck to their trauma. Their trauma is part of their identity, part of who they are. And the question gets to be, who are you without that? Who are you if you drop the story? Who are you if you never speak about that again?
Yeah.
Do you even know who that is? So years ago, I was attracting a lot of women that had gone through some sort of sexual abuse.
Mm.
And one woman in particular, we unraveled this, that when she was getting abused, that her abuser would pay her afterwards to keep her quiet. So she had this association with money that never felt good. She found it so difficult to receive money because it always reminded her of these incidences when she was younger.
Mm-hmm.
So part of it gets to be, are you ready to let that story go? Letting it go does not mean that it was right. It doesn't mean that it was okay. It doesn't mean you need to reconnect with those people. And I'm talking about any situation here. But what it means is that you get to let go of the emotional attachment. And that energetic emotional attachment is what is the driver that keeps the trauma alive. It's not actually the trauma itself, especially when it comes to years down the track. It's the emotional attachment that we have to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the injustice. It's the hurt. It's the pain.
Yeah.
And the moment we can let go of that aspect of it, our life can change.
Which brings me kind of this idea of forgiveness, because Oprah was saying that basically you don't condone what happened, but you let it go. And my follow-up question is, so for example, forgiveness, right? Just a hypothetical scenario is, let's say, client just suffer horrible abuse, and then let's say 20, 30 years later, he or she encounters their perpetrator, and the perpetrator is either bleeding out or dying. What is forgiveness in that context? Does he or she save that person, or does he or she person let that person suffer? And then I'm just curious about that.
It's a really good point. And what you say about Oprah is very true. Forgiveness is not about condoning what has been done, but it's the ability to let go, right? It's the ability to leave the past in the past. I always say the more you hold on to the emotions of the abuse, of the trauma, they are still controlling you. And you actually have the power to control you. Only you controls you. Right? So empower yourself. Take back your power and go, do I want to keep focusing on this or not? And this is where we can go into the NRT, which is about how do we rewire the brain not to necessarily come into a positive state, but out of a negative state, right? So it can be neutral. I always say this, forgiveness is not about condoning, it's about letting go, but you are also allowed to have boundaries around that. So if you were mistreated as a child, the forgiveness is for you, but you're also allowed to have boundaries around that to be whatever you want them to be. That doesn't mean I need to go back to that person. That doesn't mean I still need to associate with that person. They're boundaries. And that's very different from forgiveness.
Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
So to your question, what do you do if you find them? You can do whatever you want because you have free will. But if you are not helping them for revenge or to watch them suffer, then I ask the question, have you truly let go? Because when we look at revenge, what is revenge anchored in? There is an emotion in you that revenge is anchored in, which tells me you fully haven't let go of what's happened.
Interesting. Yeah. Because it's kind of interesting because it's kind of the intention, like, you know, revenge is intentional, like, so it's kind of interesting that, and yeah, I love this idea of boundaries. I have to think more after our talk about this, and because you know, it's kind of cliche now. People are like, oh, just let it go, you know, forgiveness. But then actually, you know, if you actually think about it, like, put your feet to the fire, you know, if like they were suffering, do you let them suffer? And then, oh, the other thing was there's like different levels of forgiveness. It's like, you know, kind of like you basically forgive to heal, but then also there's forgiveness to love, basically, where you love the people that hurt you, you know, that cause your suffering. That's like kind of Mother Teresa level. You know, that takes, you know, huge amount of, you know, courage to live it at that.
That, Christopher, and I personally look at this from an observation perspective, right?
Yeah.
And it is the acknowledgement that we are all on our individual journeys. So my journey is very different to your journey. And it's less about love as in what we perceive as love, you know, in the Hollywood movies and whatnot, but more as love as acceptance, more as love as, I know you're a toxic person and you're not changing, and that is okay, because I don't have control over you and you have free will. And this is your life and your life path that you get to live, and that is okay.
Yeah.
But I also get to have my boundaries and go, how much in your world do I want to be or not? Right? And this goes a lot when I see toxic parents, right, that have neglected children or abused them in some sort of way. It's like, we can forgive our parents, but does that mean you need them 100% in your world? Right? And what you said before, it's like, do I want to step back in the fire?
Yeah.
So there's those different elements of, I get to respect who you are, where you are, how you do life, and knowing that's not the way that I do. But that's okay, because that's the choices that you get to make.
Yeah. Yeah, fascinating.
And if I like them, I will bring you into my world. But I have a choice and boundaries and values and standards that I need to honor within myself.
Yeah, fascinating. Yeah, I need to have you on a future episode, because you talk about, you know, you have so many different modalities that we can contribute to achieving business, health, and wellness goals, and kind of you can make the kinds of results and transformations, talking about, you know, quantum transformations, which is really interesting. How can people check out your website, your work, follow you on social media, reach out to you, etc.?
So I'm on social media, is on Instagram mainly. So I'm at Jennifer McCormack Wellness. And my website is jennifermccormack.com.au, because I'm in Australia.
And for all the audience out there, that's why I love talking to entrepreneurs with just so much diverse skill sets and perspectives, you know, kind of get things that, you know, kind of things that plague all of us. And all of our resources will be in the links and show notes. Be sure to give her a like, follow, share, comment, subscribe, check out her website, check out her work, reach out to her. And with that, thanks so much for an insightful conversation.